live? I don't know. I think we're live. I think that it went out. Oh, my doggy Milo's in the picture down there. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mike Rosehart Show. It's been another week, and here we are, live for another update on whatever's been going on in my life and my thoughts on investing, and then whatever you guys have for Q&A on personal finance, real estate, whatever you're investing in, I can chat about it. A little bit of Bitcoin tonight, a little bit of chat on some of the stocks that I like, if you guys want, or general market. Probably general market advice is better. You guys can probably have a better time picking stocks than I do. Lately, I've really not done well at that. And I know in my heart that building a nice diversified portfolio is the key, and yet I continue to short Newegg, and I continue to, play a lot of these short-term trades that don't make a lot of sense. Hey, Port City Trading Desk, good to see you on tonight. Yeah, if you got a question, put it in the comments. If anyone's jumping on and they do have a question, throw it in the comments. I like to lump all of my, by the way, if you guys notice, I still not able to shave, unfortunately, because I am not back to where I was from that loss. Unfortunately, I got out of my Newegg short after it fully, recovered back to where it was before, despite the losses I had by hedging and the margin call. Did not stay true to the trade, and now I'm slowly working back to where I was. I've recovered most of it. Like, I don't know, at one point I think I was down like 1.6 million when my account got liquidated and it blew up, and unfortunately my entire crypto, one pro tip, segregate your account into multiple accounts. Did not know this. It's a pro tip I learned, and one of like the 10 pro tips that I learned in having some fun there. The options trading portfolio, with interactive brokers, you can create separate accounts. So you can have one that's interactive brokers, one that's a dividend portfolio, one that's maybe like a long-term growth, buy and hold, maybe another one that you do like your crypto plays in. And it's really key, I think, to have that. I didn't have that. And so it forced liquidation on several positions that were on big down days. Like I think at the time my Mara and Riot position was huge. Like I had like, I don't know, almost $1 million in Mara and Riot. It was down 12% that day. And the margin call on Newegg, it liquidated everything. It liquidated all the stuff that I'd bought on margin. And it was scary. It was, hadn't been through that before, so that was a good learning experience. But now it's good to segregate things into multiple accounts. I had it in 2 accounts. One, it's like my dividend portfolio. In my dividend portfolio, I try to aim for around an 8% return from dividends. Before leverage, with leverage, you can typically return like a 15%. And then capital appreciation on top of that. We're not really in it for capital appreciation. Hopefully the stocks appreciate, but they might not. It doesn't matter. We're in it for the cash flow from that, right? And it's sort of a stable piece. I know I can do better in the private lending space, but there are tax advantages to a dividend portfolio over private lending. Here in Canada, if they're Canadian eligible dividends, then you get, well, if you're a couple, $52,000 a person, completely tax-free if that was your only income source. So you could, in theory, retire with a dividend portfolio where capital appreciation, so any appreciation on the stocks, is a capital gain, and you're paying basically the maximum you pay is about 20 to 22% tax on that. And then all the dividend income, it'd be tax-free, because dividend income, you get a credit for all the tax the corp's paid, and if it's only $50,000 in income each, completely tax-free, so that's pretty sweet. And then in your tax-free savings account, you can have probably 100 grand a piece between you and your spouse. There's 100 grand each, 200 grand right there. And as it grows, so does the room in that TFSA permanently. So in theory, your TFSA over a lifetime could grow to $1 million each. And anything that happens within your tax-free savings account here in Canada is, again, tax-free. So that's a great place to do private lending. That's a great place to take on those more aggressive plays. If you're gonna buy, long call options, that's the place to do it. There's some tax advantages there. You can't short. You're limited on what you can do. You can't really spread trade that much inside your TFSA. You can just go long. Like if you're just like super bullish on Tesla, let's say, you could just, you could go long and buy some calls within your tax-free savings account, and all that growth would be tax-free. The beauty of that is options allow you to control shares at discounted prices. So you effectively create leverage inside of your tax-free savings account, which is great because if, these stocks you have appreciate 30%, you could be up 100%, which is great. If you're in it for the long term, you can hold that, then that's great. The great thing about buying call options is too, you might pay $5 for that option. If the stock doesn't skyrocket, your max loss is the $5 you paid a contract. So you can't lose everything. That's why they allow it inside of a tax-free savings account. That's why I like call options better than owning shares. There are advantages to being able to, for instance, if you're really bullish, you just sell puts, use the puts to pay for the calls, and then you're riding it for all the way up, and your calls were free. Like if the stock doesn't go if it just kind of stays flat, your puts paid for all your calls. So now you've got all that bullish exposure. If the stock pops off, you've got call options, which you can use to then get the shares and make all that money. If they do pop off, if they don't, it's okay. You sold puts. If it crashes, of course, that's no good because then your calls were useless. And in which case your puts might make you actually have to own the shares, which, if you're super bullish on the company still, and they go through a recession or a dip, you might want to own shares anyway and sell your tax-free savings account, in which case they put them in your account and you're good. So it's a bullish strategy, but it's one where the theta decay of the call options is covered by the puts. And there's a lot of companies out there like Tesla right now where you can do those types of trades, and Neo and a lot of the tech companies right now where they pay really, really good premiums on the puts that pay for the calls, especially if you timed it on a red day and a green day. You want to obviously buy the calls on a red day. You want to actually it's best to both sell the put and buy the call on a red day. So look for a down day. That's the best time. When people are most fearful, that's the time you want to be bullish. Hey everyone, good to see you guys on. Oh sweet, super chat. Port City says, appreciate the input, Mike. Cheers. Thank you for the super chat. We have the ads turned off, so if you super chat, your question gets priority bump. So Port City Trading Desk, I see your question here. What should I do? You're missing some punctuation here, but what should I do to find a new broker? I thought brokers are supposed to present multiple deals. If you have a 750 plus credit score, appreciate the input and all the best, Mike. Cheers. So brokers are human beings, right? They run a business, and probably they're going to pick the path that is both best for what they think is best for you, but more importantly, what's easiest for them as well, right? So if there's a lender that they think there's a 50-50 chance that you'll get approved with, they may not even submit your application there because they don't want to waste their time and their resources. So that's important too. I think when you're picking your lenders, remember that their bias lies in them getting a fee. Sometimes, or often, the lenders will offer them, like I have mortgage brokers that sometimes might place private mortgages for me, let's say. And if I call them and say, hey, I want to place a private mortgage at 10%, a first mortgage on someone's property. If you come across anyone who needs a private mortgage for a flip for 6 months to a year, send them to me, I'll fund. And I'll give you a 1% fee if you put my mortgage on over someone else's. Banks do this too. So a lot of the A-tier lenders will say, hey, we have a promotion to our broker channel where we'll offer a $5,000 fee. And so they're going to focus on where they get paid. And that might not be the best product for you. It depends on the broker that you have. There are some brokers who are amazing and whom don't care about the money. They care about the long-term relationship and getting you the best deal. They don't want to jeopardize that at the expense of a small commission, right? So they'll throw that commission away. They won't think about that in their mind, and they'll focus on the best product for you. But yes, in theory, a good broker has access to many different channels and can apply to many different lenders on your behalf. Typically, they'll pick one or two that are best suited and try their chances there. Usually one at a time, as not to waste their energy and effort, because it's a lot of work for the broker to put together. My understanding is it's a lot of work to put together the business case and then present that and have the back and forth question. Depending on how complex your situation is, it may be a situation where they're spending dozens of hours of time back and forth with building the business case and explaining it to their underwriter on that side. So when you're trying to find a good mortgage broker, I've always found that the place to start is referrals. So I would talk to people within my network who are doing the types of deals that I need to get funded and say, hey, who are you using? And go have a conversation with that person. Are they someone that picks up the phone when you call? That's important. What does their current client base look like? There are some brokers who are amazing, but they have 250 clients and you're not a priority. So they're not going to call you back. They're not going to prioritize your deal. So that's something where some of the best brokers out there, and even one of like my favorite couple of brokers that I know, some of them are so busy that I could refer you to them, but they wouldn't even take your file probably. They'd be so busy that the file wouldn't get put through because their assistant is doing it, or it might not be as good of a job because they're so busy, right? So I think what you want to find is, I like to go onto those websites like, Rate Hub and Rate Spy, and you'll see on there brokers that are advertising promotional rates. That's a great place to start because I think cost, when I'm looking at a mortgage broker, the two things that matter most are well, number one, always, will they get me approved? That's number one, at terms that I'm, that are good to me. Because every broker can get anyone approved. Like, a good mortgage broker has an A, B, C, and D tier. So worst case scenario, they've got private lenders at 12% that they can throw in at the last minute and get the deal done. So they typically will try with A lender, and if it doesn't go, they'll go B lender. Problem with some of those lenders is they may not be great with the A tier channel, and they might try to push you into the C channel because they get paid more. They get a 2% broker fee to throw you in one of those products, which is not as good for you. So I like to start with those websites that are super cheap. If you have great financing capability, meaning you have great income, you have great, credit score and all that kind of stuff, and you don't have a super complicated file, probably just go on like ratespy.com and you'll see a bunch of them there. You can pick from. Some of them offering super great promotional rates, and that's key. I think cost is number one when you're looking for your mortgage product. But if you're not an A tier borrower and you're looking for a lender just who maybe is more B tier, probably not the place I would go would be those RateSpy places, because those are like the most competitive rates. And if you're not the most competitive applicant, you're not going to even qualify for those. So probably better to go then, if you're looking for rental properties or flips, better to go find like a B tier. As an example, like Calvaire Mortgages is someone that I've used before. They've been competitive for flips, especially. I recommend them. They have some products that start, I think, at like 7.99%, and they'll do 6-month open terms. They do have a lender fee. You got to pay. That's just part of doing a short-term product. But it can be cheaper than being stuck in a cheap bank product where there's huge breakout fees and it's a closed term where you're paying potentially more than the lender fees on an open term type product. So it can make sense to go with someone like that. So if you want to check those guys out, shameless plug, I get paid nothing to refer you to them. They also have products where you can buy 0 down, I believe. It's like 15% interest, but I believe they cover the down payment too. So there's a product, that they have for everyone. People who have, not much money, they put 10% down and do a flip. If they've got some experience and they can build a business case and it's a good property, that's what they're looking at. They don't even, I believe they don't even do appraisal. They do like an evaluation process with a realtor. So there's not even a formal appraisal in their lending approach. They're out of Alberta, but they do a lot of work in Ontario, and they did 2 mortgages for us this year, and it was good on our flips. Overall, I had no complaints. They were relatively competitive for me. I don't know if that's because of my brand, they were good with me, but overall I had a good experience. It was a quick approval process and relatively prompt, and the rates were decent for the product I was looking for in a short-term flip that was open. It was what I was looking for. And yeah, so Calvaire, I think it's CALVERT Mortgages. I think they're Canada-wide. I don't know. They're a small mom and pop shop with their own fund, and they've got sort of a small team. So yeah, they're decent. There's a dozen more companies just like that you can go check out. And if you want on Kijiji and typed in like, private lending, private mortgage broker, dozens will pop up. You can make some phone calls and just shop what products they have. And through trial and error, like you might take a deal down and try it with 7 different lenders. I used to do that. Back in the day, I would take a deal down, and I'd apply to 7 different lenders. I'd have an A lender at like Scotia, I'd have a backup option at like BMO, and then I would go to my B tiers. I would hit up like my, I also used Lend City before. I've heard mixed things. Some people positive, some people, they did a couple deals for me and it was all right. They put me through B2B Bank for some B tiered lending at like 3.29% on some properties. So they were all right as well. They're out of Windsor. I don't know. And again, I've had subscribers come on and have differing opinions, but I had a good experience with them. Lend City Mortgage, they're pretty good out of Windsor, Ontario. They have the B tier, the C tier, they have the A tier, stuff too. They can put you through like, a proper A channel. Then they have the private people who will do the 10% mortgages or whatever on the flips you need to. So that's another example. If you're doing flips or if you're doing a BRRRR, that's almost always the way to go too, only because you want an open product that while you're transforming the property over the 6 months, you don't want to be stuck in a bank product, because when you go to refinance out of that fixed product, there's typically huge fees associated, and the bank doesn't like you to refinance so quick. There's a seasoning period, and so it's better really to go with the private route, I think, in the beginning, or cash, or depends how you value the return on your capital. But a good question. Thanks for popping in there, and I appreciate the super chat there. That's awesome. It does keep the channel alive. It's nice to make a couple of bucks. you know, to pay for a smoothie the next time I'm out at McDonald's or something. So appreciate that. Wow, another super chat. Cool. Super chat city today. So Robin says, hi Mike, regarding real estate investing for passive income, can you please provide more advice on tenant screening? So I have some great videos, Robin, about a year and a half ago, where I went through different, I had like 4 or 5 videos where I spent at least 20 minutes in each video on the live streams, where I would go into depth on tenant screening and property management. One of those videos I took down only because I was speaking freely, and I think one of the videos came off prejudice, and that was not the intent at all. I was just talking on law of averages and what I'd experienced. I have to be very, very careful on here. Even my lawyers advised to like, just be careful, you know, when you're out there speaking publicly, not to, like as an example, do not sue me for what I'm about to say, but like I could say, people with bad credit scores, low income, if I look at they can offer up their bank records. That's something I ask for almost always, is a 60 or 90-day bank statement to see how people spend their money. Those types of data points really have correlated strongly to good tenant placements. Things like looking at where they live now. Like, hey, can I come see where you live now? Like, I'll just come check out they don't have to, but if they're willing to show you where they live now and they live in somewhere nice and they keep their house well, that's a great indicator. My grandmother used to do rental properties, you know, years and years ago, back when it was, you know, super affordable to get into a rental property, and she had a couple properties beside her, and that was what she always did. It was like, go to their house and see how they live now, and you can typically weed out any hoarders, any druggies, and not to say that drugs are bad necessarily either. I don't want to get myself in trouble here by going into the tenant screening. You have to find the right candidate for the tenancy. So you want to find a tenant that's going to be a good fit in the building. So if you have a building that's full of like people who like smoke or whatever, and you put in someone who doesn't smoke, you know, they might not get along so well with the other tenants. So you have to fit with the building too, and you know, the tenant profile of the building. Ideally, you know, in a good area with an A-class building, I'm only looking for people with above 700 credit score. I'm only looking for people with, you know, solid jobs, or, you know, steady income, or solid assets. Like there are people who have, you know, so their parents died and they inherited 250 grand from their parents' sale of their house, but they have terrible income and a crappy credit score. Someone like that, I've had tenants like that, you know, that were actually good, that, you know, non-smoking, not that there's anything wrong with smoking, didn't have, you know, pets, not there's anything wrong with pets, but in certain situations, having like a big dog in a sixplex might cause issues with the other tenants. So you might think ahead, not that you can discriminate on that one thing, but when you're looking at the whole profile of the tenant, is this tenant going to cause trouble with other tenants? It does this, even like simple things, like sometimes I'll do a little test where I'll ask certain questions and just see how flexible they are in their overall demeanor. Are they combative? Are they, you know, sometimes you ask a question and they come at you like they're defensive or they attack, and just in their own verbal language, you can tell that they're type of tenants who enjoy conflict. That type of tenant I don't want to place. Like right away, if someone's rude on the phone, if I can tell that they're in any way combative, like I've had some tenants reach out and be like, I know you're never going to place me, but like, here's my life story, and like, I'll sue you if you don't, you know, place me as a tenant. You get these weird, you get hundreds of requests on Facebook and Kijiji. But when I used to do it, and I don't do it as much anymore, I did place 4 units last year. I placed a full single family house of mine and a couple of duplex and triplex units. I only did it to prove to my property managers that it was doable. And so I wanted to get a good tenant just to prove that I could still do it. It's been great. The tenants I placed all last year, all fantastic. My property managers, I find, some of them are, I had one who was really great. I've had some that are not as great, that don't do the effort, they don't do the proper screening, right? They don't pull the credit score, they don't check the bank statements, they're not calling landlord references. They're just, you know, running 10 tenants through in a showing and picking whoever's willing to give first and last, you know, barring that they're not like complete sketch bags. So you don't want to be that bad on the spectrum. Like there needs to be a level of screening, I think, that's important, especially if you have like just a couple of properties. You want to make sure you're placing good tenants. Tenant placement is more important than property management. That's where you make the most mistakes, I think, is in the tenant placement. That's where it all goes wrong. If you place really great tenants, I've had tenants that literally I come into the unit, it's freshly painted and staged nicely with their furniture. It looks better than when I gave them the unit. I've had tenants move out, with nicer units than I gave them. That's a good tenant. I can say from my experience in hundreds of tenants, I've never had a wealthy tenant with great credit score and good job ever trash for my places. I can say that it is a strong correlation. The higher the income, the higher the credit score, the higher the net worth, they tend not to be as much drugs or drinking or smoking, tend to be non-smoking tenants. They tended not to have pets. That's kind of what I've seen has been the least amount of damage. I have a big dog. I know what it's, and I have 3 kids, by the way, too. Not to say anything's wrong with kids. Certain buildings do really well with kids. Some buildings don't do well. Buildings that have no outdoor play space, buildings where there's another tenant next to them is loud, who plays the drums. That's not going to be a good fit to a single mom with 3 kids. She's going to be calling you whenever he's banging on the drums, and there's going to be tenant conflicts all the time. Probably you'll end up with non-payment of rent by one of them and continuous tenant conflicts, which make property management difficult for your manager, or if you're managing yourself, makes it difficult for yourself. So very important, I think, to place smartly. I try to, I had 10 commandments for tenant placement, which I don't want to share in here because I don't want people to rip it apart. But I had 10 questions that I asked, which if you message me on Instagram, I might share them. I used to have 20 commandments, but now I have 10 commandments that I gave to the property manager. And I'm like, these are the 10 things, these are the 10 boxes that I want to see answered at least. And there are exceptions. Like someone could have a dog that they take really good care of. They keep the nails super trim. They don't scratch. Like my dog scratches the floor. When he gets excited, he runs in the hardwood. There's going to be some scratches. Like that's life. Sometimes he'll be outside and he'll scratch at the door. Like pets do damage. But if you take a pet deposit or if the tenant offers a pet deposit, that's a good sign, right? Like, hey, I have a dog. Like if I was going to rent somewhere, I'd be like, hey, here's $500 as a pet deposit. I know my dog. I train him well. I keep his nails short, but he's going to make a mess. He's a dog. I know he's going to get into things. If he damages the drywall, I'll fix it. I'll move out. I'll paint it. If I don't, here's a deposit. Like this is me trying to get as a tenant, trying to get a good unit. If I was trying to rent a nice house, that's what I would say. Like I'm willing to cover everything. I'm in the business. I can get it all done to a top standard. To a landlord, that's music to their ears. Of course, they probably wouldn't want a tenant with a pet. I know some landlords are anti-pet. You can't. Legally in Ontario, you cannot discriminate based on pets. But you still get applications with 6 bunnies, 3 lizards, 2 cats, and 5 dogs. I can say 95% of every tenant I've had with more than 1 cat and 1 dog inside of a small apartment, I've had issues with upon move out. Not that having multiple cats and multiple dogs inside of a small unit makes you a bad tenant. It doesn't. You could be a good tenant. It's just the majority of what I've seen is damage at a higher rate than normal wear and tear. It's discrimination to say that but landlords have a choice. And when you're citing why you didn't, accept a tenant, you can say, hey, you didn't have great credit, and I'm looking for a tenant with better credit. At the end of the day, it's your choice to pick the best tenant possible. And if there's things like, I don't know, like income, it should, I don't know if I'd have to look this up, but like, I'm pretty sure you're allowed to discriminate for credit score, income. You can't for assets, but income you definitely can. You can say, hey, I don't think you can afford this unit. I'm worried on your affordability. Typically you'd say, the good ratio is 3 times the rent. So someone's making $5,000 a month in income. Typically they'd be okay to rent a $1,500 to $2,000 a month, a place. Sometimes you let them go 50%. That's the max. But you get people applying who make 50 grand a year who want to rent a house for 3 grand a month. They can't afford that. Unless they're a dual income household where there's another person making another 5 grand a month, they can't afford it. And a lot of tenants can't afford it, unfortunately. It's a really sad situation right now here in Ontario. But as a landlord or a property manager, you've got to be you're looking out for the other tenants in the building and the owner. That's your focus. You want to provide good, clean housing at market price to the best available candidate you can find. And if there's 10 candidates and one of them's amazing, you're going to choose that amazing candidate every single time, right? That's, to get a good unit, you get a good tenant applying to it, you're going to have to spend time getting good quality pictures, doing a video walkthrough. Pro tip, I never do a showing until a person has watched the entire 3D walkthrough that I film on my phone and upload to YouTube. If they have not seen the entire apartment already, they do not get a showing. If I've not screened them before for credit score and asked my 10 questions, they do not get a showing. I get hundreds of tenants. I can't do hundreds of showings. There's no way. We get 100 applicants. We say there's 5 or 10 showing spots. We're going to pick based on, well, the property manager would pick based on those situations. My first property manager, he was doing showings to everyone. And I'm like, wait, you're gonna get a call? And he's like, yeah, I got a call from John, has 9 lizards and 6 kids, and he wants to rent a bachelor. And I'm like, why would you go drive there and waste your time and for that one showing? And then he doesn't even show up for the showing. Another pro tip, do them in 10-minute increments, but line up at least 5 or 6 showings before you go to a property. Don't go show a property to one tenant. Half of them don't even show up, prospective tenants. So you want to line up like 5 or 10 all in a row who've already seen the pictures, already seen the video, and been pre-screened. So they're all good, well, potentially decent quality tenants that you'd be willing to rent the property to, so you're not wasting any time. A lot of people waste dozens of hours of time on tenant placement. You could spend 100 hours or 2 weeks full time placing a tenant for a house. That's why realtors charge 1 month's rent as a fee, because it's a lot of work if you do it properly. A lot of property managers and people who place tenants don't do it properly, right? And that's why you end up with problems later on. That's why you hear the horror stories in property management. It always stems back to bad tenant placement. I've never placed an A+ tenant and had it go wrong. It doesn't happen. People talk about like, oh, well, I had no idea the person was this bad. There's always a red flag. If you've done enough due diligence, a good tenant can't hide everything from you. I even had a way to determine, like I'll often do a call to verify Photoshop potentially on state. I've had a lot of bank statements like Photoshopped and like pay stubs Photoshopped. There's a lot of ways to check into all that. The red flags are clear. And if you do your homework at the outset, you'll never have a bad tenant. It just doesn't exist. You can inherit one, maybe, but if you know what you're doing and you follow the commandments of tenant placement, you won't have a bad tenant. It just doesn't exist. You don't get those. I mean, you will. Of course, it's a 1% chance, but like in 100 placements, 99% of the time, you'll place well. You'll have no issues. Anyway, that's my rant on property management. It's been a long time since I've talked about that, only because the negative feedback associated with doing streams related to property management. I've tried to remove my brand away from property management and tenant placement only because Western University basically came out and tried to write an article against me saying I was racist when I made comments of like international students that were coming and staying in our properties from India, 3 to 4 in a room. And this was like every single time. My property manager placed hundreds, and I talked to other people in the field who were doing it and had placed hundreds. And I'm like, hey, what are you seeing with international Indian students, as an example? What are you seeing with your bed bug rates, your cockroach rates in properties that didn't have it before? And it was like 9 out of 10 were seeing that same issue occur. And I don't know if it's a cultural thing. I can't. Anyway, so I don't want to speak to that stuff. Generalizations are bad. There are great Asian and Indian tenants. I have some fantastic stories about great tenants that I've placed. I had some amazing Western Indian students that I placed on my properties. One of them went on to go into medical school and did fantastic, stayed on my property for a couple of years, paid great rent, kept the unit in pretty good shape overall. I mean, they were students, so there was some wear and tear, but I was okay with that. They paid decent rent. It was part of what I was expecting. It's part of my expectations. I've had a lot of horror stories too, and you can't generalize. That's wrong. And I don't want to come off like I'm not racist. There are good generalization rules of thumb that you can use. You could, for instance, you could ask, the Indian international students, hey, do you plan to have 3 people in each bedroom? And if they say it's very, very common in that culture. I don't know why. It just, the 3 of them will sign a lease and I'll come in. There'll be 9 in the apartment. It happened, half a dozen times. And I was told by them repeatedly, this is a cultural thing. We like to co-sleep. We like 2 in a room, and we're frugal. So we like to, culturally, I actually really respect that because I'm super frugal too. I'm all about that. In university, in my first year, I shared a room. We had 2 beds in one room with my best friend. And so I'm used to that. Like I lived in a dorm sharing a room. So I'm all about that. But as a landlord, more tenants equals more tenant damage, more utilities. And if utilities are inclusive, which they usually are in student rentals, that factors into our decision. There should be a rule in the lease. Hey, 1 per bedroom. Whenever I've had 1 per bedroom with international students that were, had decent grades, no issues. No issues at all. So those are one of the things that I look for, is good grades as a student. And parents on the lease is important too. I think international students, because they're parents and they have no family here, there's no mom to come and say, hey, this place is disgusting, clean it up, right? There's no, like with students that have parents here, they come and they say, hey, clean this place up. This is embarrassing. But they don't get that, right? So I don't know if that plays into it. I have no idea. I'm just speculating at this point. Alec, and it's cultural too as well. Just coming from a country where, imagine, running plumbing, and you come here, and this happened a lot. Like I've had this probably more times than I can count on my hand, where the toilets all get backed up and the sewer gets backed up. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, well, we've never used toilet paper before, so we use the whole roll every time we go. And I'm like, whoa, like you got to be flushing like 5 times for that to go. Like, you just don't. It's a cultural difference here. Like the floors, for instance, are concrete in a lot of countries in East Asia, all around the world. There's concrete floors. Here we have wood subfloors. If you wash your face or pour water all over the floor and leave it, it rots the wood, the trim's garbage, and you'll have eventually structural damage. In other countries, you can leave water on the floor. There's a drain in the corner. In most of Europe, that's how people shower. They don't mind. And so a shower curtain is very, very important here. It's a cultural difference. So if you're going to choose those tenant profiles on the student rental side, you've got to make sure you're getting in there and you're giving them a sort of a welcome to Canada, how to live in a house brochure. And I actually made one that had like 20, I had my property manager make it, that had like 20 things they had to do. And that helped a lot. But a lot of landlords don't realize, like we just assume, a human doesn't, like we all just live the same. We don't. Like certain people are used to living, in huts, and they come to Canada, they're internationals. They may never have lived in a house before. They don't understand how electrical and plumbing might work. You might have to give them basic overviews, or you could have major problems on your hands like fire or flood in your house. So these are important things, I think, when you're picking a tenant, just knowing what you're signing up for and making sure that you're onboarding the tenant properly. And onboarding requires more work, but it's part of the game. Technically, you can't discriminate. If they're the best tenant, then you'd have to prepare for those things. Alex, thank you for the super chat. Another super chat. Wow, awesome. We're on a roll. I'm prioritizing the super chat here. He says, Alex says, hey, Mike, do you ever list a property mid-renovation, say 6 weeks before move-in date? So if you're talking about listing to rent, always. I always have an ad out before it's ready. I don't want vacancy. So if I can rent it out for the day it's done, that's perfect. A key cornerstone to that strategy is making sure you have, like I'll typically in my ad, I'll post pictures of another unit and I'll say in the ad, this is pictures of a comparable unit, exact same finishes, this unit's under construction, but this is what it will look like. And then when I go and show the unit, or my property manager goes and shows the unit, I would say, hey, come take a look around. The floors are just going in right now. The trim isn't in yet. It isn't even fully painted, but take a look around. These are the finishes of my other bunch of properties. I can take you over to the other property and I can show you what my finishes look like over there. Or if it's a duplex, typically I'll show the unit that's finished. We'll give the units under construction. And most of the time I can rent it before it's finished based on the vision. Now it's important to make sure you actually hit your deadlines and are actually done when you've said you're going to have the tenant move in, because otherwise you're gonna have to compensate them or put them up somewhere. So it's very, very important that you're giving yourself a little extra time when you're taking those types of risks on of placing a tenant early, but very, very important. One of my key strategies to maximizing cash flow when I was all about that on the landlording game was I'd buy a property with a 60 or 90 day close with a clause in it that I had the right to show the property anytime I wanted with 24 hours notice. And I would often rent it out and collect first and last before I owned the property. On one triplex that I had, I actually raised like 5% of the whole purchase price just on getting first and last for all the vacant units. And I helped use that to close the deal. So you can definitely rent a unit out. You're not supposed to be able to use, last month's supposed to sit in a bank account and be in trust or whatever. I have the cash in trust. I'm just saying, like, now I could dip into more of my emergency fund, I guess. I don't know. You probably shouldn't do that, but in theory, you could collect first and last well before you even purchase the property. Most landlords, if you're buying with vacant possession, they wouldn't care, right? They're like, hey, if you want to show the unit, go ahead. Power to you, right? So I think that's something you can do. You could also have it shown and ready to go, and then the day of closing, sign the lease and collect the first and last. That's something that I've done too. Or just be ready, because if you wait till closing date and then you have to do a bunch of stuff to the property, you might be months of vacancy. And those months of vacancy, when you're just onboarding the property to your portfolio, they're thousands of dollars. It could be $10,000 in losses during that time if you're not efficient. And that's where a lot of people go wrong, I think. They're just afraid to start advertising it before they've closed on it. I've never missed a closing. Dozens and dozens and dozens of deals. I've never missed a closing, ever, because I'm short of funds or whatever. I've always found a way. I've always found a private backup option to close. I've had to delay closing before for various reasons. We've had to extend, but I've never missed a closing. I can say every time I've gone firm, I've closed. That's one of the things that has been important to my strategy as well. And so that's why I'm not afraid to rent it out, because I will always close. I will always have a way to close. Imagine if you didn't close on a firm deal and you'd rented it out to some tenants. Imagine the issue. You'd have to obviously refund them their first and last month's rent, plus potentially, well, they haven't moved in yet, so they don't have possession of the unit. So I guess you just would cancel the lease. It would be a non-valid lease because you didn't even own the property. I have to think through the implications of that, but pro tips if you're trying to maximize your cash flow in the start of the journey. Okay. What do you look for in single to duplex conversions was the second half of Alex's question. Gotta make sure he gets his bang for his $4.99, his $5 buck. So when I'm looking at duplex conversions, one of the most important things I'm looking for is whether or not I can affordably or cost effectively separate a unit into two. So usually an unfinished basement is a great candidate, especially if it has a washroom already in it and there's plumbing for laundry. I almost always turn the laundry plumbing into the kitchen because the plumbing's already there for a laundry sink. It's the same for a kitchen sink, in which case there's like no major changes needed, right? So wherever you can leverage existing infrastructure. So ideally, if I go to a basement, it already has a bathroom, or imagine sometimes like you'll have a bungalow where they'll have an addition on the back. Often I can just put a wall up or put a door, like a steel door with a lock on it, and boom, now we've got a back bachelor unit and a front 3-bedroom unit. And so there's these, often I look for properties with additions on them. Old additions are great for converting to, a back bachelor apartment, and the rest is, the large unit and one small unit. That's a favorite of mine. So bungalows, I love bungalows because the basement potential. With 2-story properties, there's often a way where especially the older 2-story properties where there's stairs right when you come in, you can usually put a wall up and then you have the main floor and basement as a unit and the second floor as a unit as well, with most of the existing infrastructure already there. What I don't want to be doing is, major electrical, major plumbing. That's where the cost gets expensive, or underpinning where you're, lowering the floor to get headroom. Proper 6'5" headroom under doors and beams. You don't want to be digging into major structural. It doesn't make sense in my market anyway. I know in some markets in Toronto it can make sense, but if you can find a deal where you don't have to do that, that's okay. That's okay, no problem. Sorry for the double question. No problem. Thank you for the second super chat. That's double awesome. I'm gonna have to treat my whole family to smoothies at this point now. What was I gonna say? Now I lost my train of thought. One of my favorite smoothies is the McDonald's. They have these fantastic $2 drink days, the smoothies there that come with the blueberry pomegranate. So good. Put a little protein powder in it, mix it around, put a little extra fruit in it. Oh, so good. So good for $2. I guess the protein powder would be like 30 cents or something. But okay, to answer your question on duplex conversions and finding properties that are good candidates for that. Typically, I'm looking for existing infrastructure. So I love when they've got 2 or 3 bathrooms in the property already, and it's a single family house and it's ready to go with a wall to become a wall and maybe like, turning a laundry into another second kitchen, and you've got a duplex. That's what I look for the most, is where it's a simple, cost-effective transition. The best is when there's already a door there and you can and it's already separated. It's already I love this. This is one of my favorites, is when it's like already a duplex kind of. And sorry, there was like a hair floating around. It's already like a duplex, but it's not legal. And you can go in and take an old flimsy door off and put a new door on and put like a deadbolt on it. And imagine there's already a kitchenette downstairs and already bathrooms and everything. And all you do is put like put a door on a doorway with a double deadbolt on both sides so that neither tenant has a key. Now it's like locked, it's fireproofed. That's awesome. I bought one where we were able to do like a $10,000 conversion to a duplex. And it's like, we just increased the value $100,000 or $150,000 by adding that extra unit and making it legal. I think in that case, there was already a kitchen down there, but we were able to turn the dryer into a stove. It was already a kitchenette, but it wasn't a full kitchen, so we had to just add a stove. That was it. It had already a fridge and everything. It was already pretty much a duplex, but they weren't using it as such. And it was a very small tweak to get it to that position. So that's what you want to do. Add bedrooms, adding units in a cost-effective way will make you a lot of money, a lot of bang for your buck. One thing I just want to share while I'm on here, ranting, looking at real estate deals in the market right now, there are tons of deals in the turnkey space. The needing work property, like everything that needs work or anything that's like pretty distressed, People are overpaying for that right now because everyone's all about the BRRRR. Everyone's all about that value add. I get so many people reaching out and be like, I want that value add. I'm like, as an example, I've got a duplex just east of downtown, like on near Adelaide and Oxford in London. One bus to Western University, one bus to Fanshawe. Listed it for 500,000, dropped it to 400,000, got multiple offers. The multiple offers came in just under 450. It wasn't what I was looking for. I wanted more for the property. It was a legal, I'd already converted it with the city, legal duplex, both units above grade, lots of parking in the back, great property. One thing it didn't have was central air. I should have added that. Trying to sell a property in July and August without central air was a huge mistake, but whatever. My point being, this property, if I listed this property for $350,000 before I spent the $100,000 renovating it, if I listed it for 350, it would fly off the shelves in London. Like a property that's 2-story detached in a decent area with big lot, lots of parking, that would fly off the shelves at 350 in London. And people would spend 100 to make it how I have it. But you spend the 100 and no one wants it. It didn't even sell. Like I tried to sell it at 450, conditional, it fell apart. And now I'm back with a stale listing, and stale listings don't do well. So that's what you want to look for if you're looking to buy, is find a stale listing. Everyone assumes, and it already sold right away, it was conditional and then the offer fell apart. It's one of those things where like a stale listing now is in a position where you can negotiate. And some of those turnkey deals that just need a few tweaks are way better priced than people send me stuff in London that's like 400 grand, it's a full gut. And I'm like, whoa, there's turnkey stuff on the market right now. I have one on the market right now, which I'm pulling it off MLS, by the way, and we're doing a few things to it, and I'm just gonna keep it as a rental and try again in the spring. But that's an example of like, I have a duplex right now that I would sell privately for $439,000. It's turnkey. You'd spend maybe 5 or 10 grand doing things like the central air for 2-3 grand. There's a couple other small things it needs from a staging perspective and a few other small fixes. But you could do those couple of things and it would rent for 3 grand a month. And there are people like just a duplex, like front and back, that would rent for almost 3 grand a month right now, furnished. Student rentals, hard to place right now because of what's happened with COVID and Fanshawe and Western. People are buying 4 and 5 bedroom, call it 4 to 6 bedroom houses near Fanshawe and near Western for $500,000 and $600,000, getting less than $3,000 a month in rent. Some of them are paying $700,000, $800,000 for these houses that are 6 bedroom. They're making $3,000 a month in rent. When you could buy a turnkey detached property at Oxford and Adelaide, okay area, like a B area. Oxford's the main artery of London, like it's pretty decent, and get better cash flow at almost like 30 to 40% less purchase price, which means 30 to 40% better ROI and cash flow. Makes no sense to me why this hasn't flown out, like why it hasn't sold. I mean, it did, I guess. We got multiple offers on offer day. I declined them all because I thought they were too low. In hindsight, I probably would have just sold it. I'm now looking at selling for probably the same price or less than the multiple offer situation. But anyway, that property, in my mind, is worth more than 450. There's no situation where that property should sell for under 450. It makes no sense. It needs a few small tweaks. But there are examples like that all the time on MLS that aren't even mine, like other deals that I see, where turnkey or near turnkey, like this property's missing AC, so you walk in, it's like 85 degrees in the house. Central air would be easy to add. It has an HVAC system already in it, a new furnace last year. So like to add central air to an unfinished basement, super easy, like $2,500 and you got central air in the whole house. One thing like that, people walk in, they're like, oh, gross, like it's not properly cleaned. And they look at like little things and they walk away. And then on the gut jobs, they walk in like, oh, everything's gonna be gutted. And they underestimate how much it costs to renovate these days with permits properly. It's often 100 to 200 grand to turn a house around. You know, if you're doing a full gut of a house, and people often go in, especially new investors who have done less than 5 flips on their own already, and they say, hey, it's gonna be 50 grand to do this work. And they rely on one contractor who ends up costing them 90 grand or 100 grand to do the work, but he quotes low and then they end up in a battle, and that is the business, under quoting. But anyway, big opportunity right now. The market's soft in London. It's down 3-4% in London, Ontario. There's an opportunity right now in the turnkey space where there's something missing, where offer date is missed. That's key, I think, is getting in there on those staler listings that are, you know, there's 1 or 2 things you gotta tweak to really get, you know, good cash flow. So there are still opportunities out there in the world if you look for them. Sometimes the duplex conversion or the large reno projects actually make you less net, especially when you consider carrying costs of like 4 to 6 months on. Everyone says they do the renovation in 1 month, but like I've never seen a proper duplex conversion full house like renovation done in less than 3 months. I don't see it, especially with a newbie. It takes like 6 months. If you're doing all the work yourself, I've seen guys take a year to turn these properties around. That's the reality, right? And if you talk to people who've been through this, they've taken a year to do the project. If they have multiple projects on the go, and you're burning through, you're burning your trades hard, trying to get through all the work. People always think it takes like a week to do something. It takes 3 weeks to do something. That's just how it is. Everyone underestimates how long something takes, how much it's going to cost. There is an opportunity right now in the turnkey-ish space right now is what I'm seeing. And there's less opportunity in the properties that need work. People are listing these properties that need work, and they're going 100, 200,000 over asking still because everyone wants that burr. And it's like all that work and energy to make almost the same percentage return as doing 2 turnkey deals in the same amount of time. Like, I'm gonna take the 2 turnkey deals over, not completely turnkey, like ideally they need something. But that to me is huge, right? Yeah, so let's go through some of the Q&A. I saw some really good questions popping up here, and I want to, address them to the audience. Kevin Fernandez has a bit of a bearish sentiment on the market. He says, get into cash ASAP, as soon as possible. Instability incoming soon. I don't know. It's possible that, for sure, we will have a correction or a pullback. It will happen. Do I know when? No. Could we roar on for another year? Potentially. Could the Delta variant become, a major issue where we go through further shutdowns and we find out that vaccines potentially don't combat a new Alpha variant or something? I don't know, I'm just making it up, but like some new variant that, they actually don't work. I don't know. Could happen. And would the market go into free fall? Yeah. Like, are we recovering from this? In some sectors, yes. In other sectors, no. So I think being in cash is dangerous only because right now there's so much stimulus, and I think there's a high probability of further stimulus to come. And stimulus means, in most cases, printing money, because they don't, like, you could, in theory, give stimulus to everyone and tax everyone at the same time. And the tax would cover the stimulus, but it takes time to change tax law and to raise revenue. And that's what gives fiat, like the US dollar, the Canadian dollar, that's what gives fiat power. Like the US dollar, the US economy is the largest in the world, and they can tax that at any time they want. Fees, duties, federal taxes, whatever. You can throw any kind of tax you want. You can tax the largest economy in the world. That is the power behind the fiat. So there is value in fiat currency. It's just they're printing more of it than they're currently collecting in revenue, and that it is currently growing. It's actually not growing as fast. So that's something that's key as well. Oh, my wife's back here. I gotta wrap this up here. I went too long. Okay, I'll pick a couple questions real quick. And if I missed your question, I'm sorry. Put it in the comments and I'll get it after. I ranted too long today. I had the door locked. My bad. My wife is stuck outside. I gotta let her in. Recommendation on dividend stocks. I had to make a whole video just on that alone. It's 50K per spouse, 100K total. But Sam, to answer your question, I like, the financial sector is paying really well, bank stocks. I like the utility sector, so your Enbridges, your Pembina, your all that kind of stuff. I like your utility plays, your telecom plays like TELUS, Bell, Rogers, all those. There's a whole bunch of sectors you can pick in Canada here. Mostly it's those sectors that pay the healthiest, most healthy dividends. What do you think about investing in real estate, limited partnerships? Don't have a ton of experience investing in limited partnerships. I assume it's like a smaller version of a REIT. I don't know. I've done private JVs with people, so I don't know if that's what you're trying to get to. Trying to go rapid fire here. Real estate portfolio, focus on acquiring deeds, not holding more than one mortgage at a time. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I like to buy low, add some value to it over time, whether that's through tenant placement or some small fixes to it, collect cash flow, build a solid portfolio that's based on cash flow, and then have an exit strategy at some point. Once I've built enough capital that I don't need to be in the active real estate game, I pivot into other asset classes. Real estate was a way to build wealth for me. It still is now a great way to build wealth, but it requires a lot of energy, a lot of active, time invested. And so if that's what you're into, there's nothing wrong with that. You could buy a whole bunch of properties at once or buy whole portfolios of properties at once too. I've seen people do that to grow and scale faster and larger multifamily. Yeah. Okay, so Juan from Sarnia, hello. Which broker do I use for stocks? So Interactive Brokers is my favorite, IBKR. They have the cheapest fees and the best margin rates, so you can borrow really cheaply from them as well to lever up to buy more stocks. Thanks, Ian, appreciate the comment. TFSA maxed out for sure before I do anything else because it's your best vehicle. Start with maxing out your TFSAs, then move to open margin products. Sometimes your RSP can make sense more than your TFSA because you're in a high income year. In those high earning years where you're higher income now than what you're going to be later, makes a lot more sense to max out those deductions for the RSP because that's tax money back. I gotta go. I'm sorry, guys. How much would you consider putting into an index ETF? So I like index ETFs for your entire portfolio. That's a safe bet. You could definitely buy the S&P 500. I think that's a great way to do it too. There's less tax advantages associated with that though. So you've got to factor in the tax advantages of a dividend portfolio. If it's all Canadian eligible dividends, you pay no tax on those dividends. That's huge. Whereas just buying the S&P 500, you'll get capital gains tax at 25%. So depending on how you build your retirement income, there's advantages to a dividend portfolio. At my level, there isn't a huge advantage to the dividend portfolio, except I can bring it to the bank and say, here's my income for the last 2 years, my dividend income in retirement, and the bank's like, boom, we're cool to lend to you on businesses you want to buy or property you want to buy. So there's some advantages to that. They don't want to lend on capital gains income. So there is advantages to a dividend portfolio of individual stocks, and it is possible with leverage that you get a higher return than the S&P 500 at a lower risk level, slightly. If you had a smaller portfolio, the bigger the portfolio, the harder it is to beat the S&P 500. The larger your portfolio, the harder it is to beat the market in general. So yeah, I gotta go. My wife's outside with the kids and I accidentally locked the door, so I gotta go let her in. There you go. So Andrew's got a good point there about selling puts and say your TFSA for margin power. Usman, thank you for the smoothies. Appreciate that. That's awesome. Another super chat tonight. That's awesome. You guys are great. Everyone was great tonight, and I really appreciate all of the super chats and all the engagement. I'm sorry if I missed your question there. If I did, put it in the comments in this video, and I'll respond in the comments to the video. It's for everyone to see, and then everyone can watch the responses. So thank you so much, everyone. Remember, the secret to unlocking a wealthier you is 3 levers: spend less, earn more, and maximize returns on the difference. I will see you next week. Every Wednesday we're live. In 2 more Wednesdays after this one, 2 more? 3 Wednesdays from now, I'll be in my new house. So that'll be the day of move-in. I'll have to go live that day. So September 1st, tune in. I'll be at my new place. So I might give a house tour, I might not. Probably won't. I didn't even know where I'm gonna go live from. I gotta find a room in the house and set up a desk and go live. So I'll see you all next week here at the cottage. Got a couple more streams. But thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'll see you on Instagram, Mike Rosehart. I am still shadow banned, so you can't tag me in posts. I can't share anything other than my own stories. But no one can see my stories unless you go to my profile and watch them and keep sending messages when you see my stories. It may start allowing you to see the stories. So unfortunately, that is the life of shadow ban. I did share some things that didn't align to Instagram's agenda related to the virus and related to vaccines and related to, I shared my dog's cut and they thought it was nudity and they deleted 3 of my posts and gave me a warning that I was sharing explicit content. So Instagram, I'm not a huge fan of. But hopefully the shadow ban will go away and I'll be able to share more with you guys on Instagram at Mike Rosehart. So thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.